2, 3, 4.
Summertime and the living is easy. Fish are jumping and the cotton is high. So hush, little baby, don't you cry.
Welcome. We're going to celebrate 50 years of bliss being used by persons who are non-speaking. This story can be told in many different ways. Everyone whose face you see on a grid in a couple of minutes could have their version of the story. But today, it's going to be the version of a teacher who was the first to teach bliss symbols in Canada and who's been with the program for the full 50 years. I hope you enjoy. We had many ups and downs throughout the 50 years. Today we're going to focus on the happy times, the things that we can celebrate, because we've accomplished a lot. This film is a companion to the Bliss Symbolics Archives, which will be housed at the University of Toronto Archive Library and at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, OISE. The archival collection and this film are made possible by a grant from Peg and Rob Brooks, who have been long-term friends of Bliss. Rob left funding as a bequest, and Peg made the decision that it had to come to Bliss Symbolics. Friendship and community is what this film is about. There will be documents and legal papers and contracts and case studies and research reports and presentations in the hard copies that will be in the archives. But today we're going to think of the happy times, the friendships that were formed, and the lives that were changed. I hope you will sit back and enjoy the many memories that we're going to share. There will be many in this film who are no longer with us or who were unable to attend this event, but they have to know that they're sharing a screen with us and that they'll always be remembered. I want to thank especially Julie Miller, Rebecca Chan, Moshe, and Aaron from the Bliss Eye Band for the extensive work that they did in making this film possible. The editing team of Julie and Rebecca and myself have worked long and hard. We had tremendous support from Mike Chiral in the special effects throughout the film and in the post-production. We had joy in doing it, and we're happy to share it with you. Many of the recordings that you'll be seeing in this film were possible because of the work of Bob Gibbons back in the 90s and into 2000s. Bob did many films, and I've been able to find sections from them that bring a lot of people back into our memory. There's a lot of music involved in this film throughout. It's been a part of the Bliss story over the last 50 years, so it had to take a dominant role here in the film. The film itself is made possible through a grant to the Bliss Eye Band from the Ontario Trillium Foundation to enable us to cope with COVID in our own special way. We were given a grant to produce videos so that we could continue our Wednesday get-togethers, but have an end product of several films instead of just meeting in person. How to share the memories of 50 years with an organization that went around the world. The way I decided to help me remember things was to have a grid. After all, many of our Bliss users get the access to their vocabulary through a grid. And so today we're going to have a grid that will demonstrate to us all of the people who were involved in Bliss, and to know that the grid couldn't accommodate all of them. It could have been a cube with many depths. The grid was a way to show the people who were involved, or some of them, in order to cover the many areas that we were involved in. We needed a frame. And so you're going to see clips and narrations and pictures all within a frame of 14 different areas. You'll find out what they are as we proceed with the film. In the same way that the grid just couldn't accommodate all the people that were involved over the 50 years, the time allotted for this film couldn't accommodate all of the activities that took place. The goal for the film had to be changed. We initially started wanting to include as many examples as we could of the kinds of things that happened during the 50 years. We've had to change that goal. We're now going to show you examples. We hope the examples that you see will entice you to go to the archives when they're ready in 2022 and get the full version of the recordings that were made and a full set of the videos and pictures that you're going to see throughout the film. Putting 50 years into a little over an hour was quite a challenge. This symbol means attention. It's a reminder of the full version of the recordings and sets of pictures that appear in the archives. Our film began with Summertime, a current recording by the Bliss Eye Band. Summer's a time that we have enjoyment and lots of activities. This film represents that well. In 1992, Bob Gibbons produced a video for us. He recorded the celebration of 21 years of Bliss that we celebrated at OISE. Our guest hosts from the CBC were Dawn Heron, Beth Harrington, and Jeffrey Kaufman. During that evening, everyone in the audience who had made some special contribution to our 21 years was given a flower. We'd like to replicate that in this film, and people are going to be given a digital rose as they present. I've discovered that I'm going to get one, which is a nice surprise for me. So I hope you enjoy seeing everyone get their recognition rose. Now we're going to use music to take us through the years from the earliest days when I wrote the Bliss Alphabet song. And then it was performed at many get-togethers, and you're going to see 2 of them. And then we decided we'd have a modern version because Bliss is alive and we still need that alphabet today. So we'll finish with a version with animation by Julie Miller and a special arrangement by Aaron Lightstone. The Bliss Alphabet Song.
Add a little crosshatch, make a little chart.
Next, take a building to London here.
Write it down on the wheel and tell me what you feel. Wheels get to start, those large things will to start.
Large half circles follow next and any other part.
Now move to all the squares, rectangles come along.
As you open notice one, they still look very strong. Then right angle triangles follow with a dog. Meet right angles and lines on base, and now what have you got?
Next come all the crosses with isosceles triangles beside. As we add the acute angles, I'm ready to run and hide. But
all we have remaining are some shapes we use in signs. So let's and horizontals first and all the other lines.
Now with the pointer and punctuation, please. We finish with our numbers that are with the ABCs. We've got a brand new alphabet. Isn't it the finest thing you ever met?
First take a wavy line, then take a heart. Add a little crosshatch, make a little chart. Next take a building, to it lend an ear. Add an arrow and a wheel, now tell me what you hear. Wheels lead to circles, large and small to start. Large half circles follow next, then any other part. Now move all the squares and rectangles come along. As you open up each one, they still look very strong. Then right angle triangles followed with a dot. Meet right angles and lines on bases, now look what you've got. Next come all the crosses with triangles just beside. As we add the acute angles, I'm ready to run away and hide. Now all we have remaining are some shapes we use inside. Let's add horizontals first, then all the other lines. Now add the pointer and punctuation, please. We finish with our numbers and our well-known ABCs. We've got a brand new alphabet. Isn't it the finest thing you
For each of the learners, there's much more for you to see. We have additional pictures and videos of them that will appear in the extended version of this film on our website in 2022. Of course, we must begin our film with our learners. They were with us from the beginning, and they're the reason for everything we do. We have chosen our own group of 7 for this film, and we've chosen them because of the variety of the things they've accomplished and the different eras in which they were learning their bliss. Some are no longer with us, but their memory always will be. Seeing them on this screen and sharing the screen with us is a great way to have them join with our learners of today. Helps us remember them vividly. We begin with Anne Running, who you will be hearing about later in the film as well.
When Anne was little, BB, or before Bliss, our family spent a great deal of time trying to figure out what she wanted to say. 20 questions often became 40 questions. One day when she was 6, she came home from OCCC, as it was then called, with 10 symbols. Somehow she was able to indicate to me which symbols she was looking at. The sentence she made was, "I love you." Her first words to me. It was overwhelming. Little did I know that she would soon learn 200 symbols, and that eventually she would use a computer and have her own voice.
Margaret Beasley spoke directly to Anne at a gathering that we had to celebrate our 30th anniversary. They were a strong team.
Thank you, Anne, for being so patient with us while we were trying to give you a tool to communicate. You tried out every switch system we could think of to work with some equipment, but you never gave up. It took us several years until we had the tool. You helped us to help other people in similar physical handicaps. We were able to learn from our mistakes, and you helped us to find the right way.
Here is Anne talking with Sherry Parkins as they plan the presentation that Anne will be making along with the other members of the Susan Wilson group. It's taken from a film made in the 90s.
Mouth. Anne says, "I hate it when people put words into my mouth."
To introduce our next learner, Carrie Harrington, this is a short clip of Anne and Carrie communicating as they gained their skills in communication. And you can see how Carrie took on the role very, very well of a listener.
He said, are you going to be able to come around? I said, I doubt it. But he has a problem asking me on the phone. No, he called me, not like. Because he said, I'm going to talk to you about the part where what I learned from the course. I can't either.
Carrie showed initiative from her earliest days.
Carrie, please don't tell, make the others guess.
And here's a memory from Barb Cates about Carrie.
Ruth telling the story about sitting around the dinner table with the ketchup that wouldn't come out of the bottle. You know how the ketchup gets stuck when it's at the bottom, and everyone's pounding and trying to get it out. And Carrie took her symbol board and said, "Put water in." It's a seminal moment. No one would have known that she had that inside her.
Carrie's poetry contributed to our many gatherings. One very special one, Take the Time.
Don't think of all the
Before leaving this short glimpse into Carrie's life, I would like to share some words from a chapter in Stephen von Techner and Nicola Grove's Augmentative and Alternative Communication Developmental Issues. In that chapter, I was able to document working along with Gwen Mann, Carrie's teacher, and Ruth Harrington. We were able to document many of the events in Carrie's life as she grew up. Here is an excerpt from a paper written by Carrie and her mother for a presentation at a conference, and here's Ruth talking. When Carrie was able to express her concern that an orange seed she had swallowed might grow into a baby inside of her, we knew that she was taking in much of what was going on around her, and we took time to explain things in a way we never had before. Carrie's ability to combine symbols for a single meaning both surprised and amazed us. Think, sleep for dream was her idea, as was difficult think for the word problem. You see, in the past, all along the doctors had been telling us she was mentally retarded, and we had been encouraged to look to the Mentally Retarded Association for her schooling. Because of this, we had prepared ourselves for serious limitations with her mind as well as her body. Carrie's ability to learn and use symbols so effectively proved to everyone she had significant capabilities. Today, Carrie is working on Chapter 9 in her autobiography, and she's also growing vegetables. Sue Odell demonstrated her initiative right at the beginning of our program. She went to Tom Ironside, the director of Recreation Department, and got Tom to give her a bliss symbol display. Sue used a range of equipment and always kept innovating. Next you see Sue talking with Kathy Fairley.
I have to live in. Sue says that when she's in her apartment and she wants to tell her attendant that she needs an uphill, then she motions.
And then her family doctor. Sue was always thinking ahead and keeping in charge of situations.
Need. I. Need. A letter. For what? Work? Because you were away? Yes. I. Want. To work. You think you're ready to go back? When do you need it by? Tuesday. And when do you want to go back to work? Tuesday. You need it by Tuesday, you're going to go back to work Tuesday. Will they accept that?
Next, we're going to hear about Justin Clark and see him as he was in the audience during the 21st anniversary celebration of Bliss. Don Heron from the CBC speaks about Justin.
Justin Clark, a young man who lived in Rideau Regional Center, who became known all across Canada in a decision-setting case. He won the right to make decisions for himself about his life, where he would live, what he would do. And we are delighted that Justin, who now lives with his friends in Ottawa, can be with us to share our celebration tonight. We'd like to share two quotes from 1982 and 1983 as reminders of the impact he made 10 years ago. Judge Matheson, the judge at the court hearing, said of Justin, "We have recognized a gentle, trusting, believing spirit and very much a thinking human being who has a unique part to play in our compassionate, interdependent society." And Shirley MacNaughton wrote at the time, in communicating together, in Justin, we have witnessed the power of one non-speaking person who is determined to communicate to those around him, and we have witnessed the effect this can have upon the world, both his and ours. And I would think that many of us saw that section of the journal with the great immortal Barbara Frum doing one of her best interviews with Justin Clark. And Justin, we'd like you to have a flower in recognition of that brave action you took many years ago. So take a flower from Elaine. Justin Clark.
We were sad to lose Justin in this past year. He was a very vital member of the team at ComputerWise in Ottawa, and he was loved by all those who got to know him. We in Toronto especially remember Justin for his time with us at the Learning Centre in Bala. Everyone who stayed at the Bala Centre determined what their goals would be on their first day. And then we would work toward those goals during the 5 days that they were with us. Here are Justin's for one of the years he was with us. Investigate and practice using BoardMaker to create bliss boards. Assess my literacy level and establish where support is needed. And this is what Justin had to say when he was asked to comment on his second year with us. It is interesting there, at the Bliss Center. I learned how to make my bliss board. I also learned a list of reading skills and spelling too. I was treated with respect, and I truly enjoyed my experience there and would recommend that other people go there to see it. We were very happy to know that Justin was feeling so positive about his stay with us in year 2. To begin Elaine Drover's story, we must start with Jane Green. You're going to see a video of Jane with Elaine and also some pictures of them together.
Being in this room itself brings back such memories to me. It was in this room that I first learned of bliss symbols, and that was in April 1975. And I can remember that thrill of excitement that Lynette was talking about, and I realized, yeah, this went together, this was wonderful. I was extremely lucky. I flew back, and when I was there, I had 2 young people waiting for me with anticipation for what I was to bring back. And I can tell you how we built up our vocabulary that first little bit. They were very sorry for me because I had to keep on working when they went home at 3 o'clock to watch the soaps. So they decided that they would want the bliss symbols to tell me what happened each day. We built up all kinds of vocabulary. And then we got on to other things, the feelings and for 14 years that had been pent up, it was a very exciting and rewarding way of teaching. Now, I've got a message from Elaine. Elaine uses a regular or communication board like this. I get her message in. Elaine says, it feels good to touch down in Toronto again and to see all you bliss people. Bliss opened doors for me. In 1975, when I learned to communicate with bliss, it was nice times and wonderful. I remember my bliss teachers today, Jane, Anne, Shirley, and more. They are my friends today. Jane and I worked a lot together. She would call and say, hey Elaine, come talk to students at the university, to children in classrooms, brownies, guides, church groups, to adults' meetings. and I would go. Many doors opened. For example, a summer job at Science North in Sudbury, presentations with Shirley in Toronto and PEI. I love Bliss. The symbols catch people's eyes when I'm out. They ask me, "Hey, what you doing?" And I tell them. To all Bliss people, love and good talking always, Elaine.
I would say Elaine is our best people person in the Bliss community. People, whether they're in hospital or just want a cup of tea or just want to have some fun, Elaine's there for them. Elaine has made great progress through the years in using a computer. Here she is in her apartment with her workstation. Today, Elaine is co-chair of Bliss Symbolics Communication Institute Canada, and one of the special roles she's going to have in the coming year is chairing a committee to look at the future for BCIC, especially thinking about succession planning and how the current board is going to be able to keep Bliss Symbolics moving well into the future in Canada. We're now going to Paul Marshall, someone who Elaine greatly admired, as did we all. Paul provided a role model for all of us. At our celebration of 30 years of Bliss back in 2001, I said some special things about Paul Marshall. I would say the same things today, only expand what I knew at that time, because there were many more examples of his contribution to Bliss after 2001. He was a very special member of our community. Paul has been doing our website since the beginning of our website. And I have to say, now this may not be very popular with all the rest of the people that we interact with, but the most dependable, the most responsible of all the people that I work with to get things done is Paul Marshall. And I'm so proud to have him. I'm going to let Paul introduce himself to you and tell you a bit about his childhood. He made this film as a promotional piece for some technology that he was working on with Michael Green a couple of years before he passed away. It was called Bliss Talk 2.
Hi, I am Paul Marshall and I was born with cerebral palsy. I grew up on a farm in southwestern Ontario, Canada. Picture a little boy excited with his brothers around the Christmas tree and not being able to speak. I did not know the word frustrating, but I knew the feeling. I was 12 years old before someone took the time to start to teach me how to read. It was shortly after that I was introduced to Bliss symbols. Yes, there are other systems that let people say simple things, but Bliss opened the world of literacy to me and that made an enormous difference.
He was older when we discovered Bliss. He chose to go to high school. He worked very hard on achieving literacy, but later in his teens. He had time to learn Bliss first. His first teacher was Barbara Rush, and Barbara discovered Bliss, brought Paul back to her classroom. He had already transferred to another school, brought him back. He had his year of Bliss with her, and then he went to high school again. We have a letter from his high school teacher saying what a huge difference he saw in Paul when he returned to school. It was his new life beginning. The remedial reading program that Paul started when he was 17 with Suzanne Clancy gave him just that kind of support he needed to embark upon his career. He wrote regular articles for the Hamilton Spectator. He was a contributing editor to Communicating Together for all of the time that Peter Lindsay and I were the editors. And Paul used his writing skills to write advocacy papers, to write poetry, to give presentations. Paul was unable to complete the project, the Bliss Talk 2, that he was working on with Michael, but I'd like you to see just the promotional piece that he prepared.
Today, technology has reached a point where my dream can be a reality. Our goal is to now give an actual voice to users and make Bliss symbols an audio communication tool. We will be able to give non-speakers a voice that will allow us to communicate faster and more complex ideas. We will be able to do it in English or French, German or Swedish. Practically any language will work. We are working to create fluid speech the way that all of you just take for granted.
Michael Green felt he couldn't go on without Paul, so I'm afraid Bliss Talk 2 was never realized. It was a wonderful dream that Paul had, and it was about to come true if his health would have let it. Handicapped or not, here I am, free to be the individual I was called to be. Look at me, ready to take my wings. And Paul was always ready to fly. Lee Merlick, the one member of our group of 7 that is not from Canada, Lee had a strong role in our program coming from Indianapolis. I had the opportunity of visiting Lee several times. He worked on the BMW with Anna Lou Waller and myself. He was a strong supporter of Bliss, felt that he was the ambassador in the United States. He had that in common with Paul, in that he thought big. Lee and Paul both shared a strong religious conviction, and I think that was a bond between them. When Lee was already a young adult, his mother found a newspaper article about Bliss in their mailbox. Both his mother and Lee felt it was a message from God. With the strong determination of Lee's mother, he had the opportunity to learn Bliss through professionals in the United States. Lee was totally committed to helping other people learn about Bliss, and he wanted Bliss to be able to translate parts of the Bible that were important to him. When Lee stayed at the Learning Center in Bala, he went to the church in our community. They invited him to speak the next time that he came to Canada.
It's a pleasure to be with you today to share the story about my life. I enjoy a lot of the same types of activities that you probably do, like spending time outside on a beautiful spring day, traveling and meeting people. God is important in my life. You dwell in our midst, whether we are disabled or able-bodied. God bless you for coming to church today.
Here's a couple of pictures that show you the warm reception he received. One little story about the influence that Lee had on our panel meetings. Whenever Lee could attend one, he did, and I have a vivid memory of one meeting when we were developing the religious symbols. There was some discussion as to whether we needed a special symbol for the Trinity or not. The decision by the group in the afternoon was that we didn't need it. Lee was devastated when I told Margareta Janisch about the concern. We reopened the discussion at dinner that night, and Lee did get his symbol for the Trinity, and it definitely had a number 3 in it. Back in 2001, we asked Britt Amberson, who was visiting us from Sweden, if she would read a poem that Lee had written.
Lee Merlick. Lee is over here, and he has written a poem, and I'm going to read that. I'm afraid in a Swedish accent, Lee, but it's okay. I think God likes music. God exists and works in music, which pulls us towards Him, using our ears and hearts and our imagination. He pulls us towards a sense of being created as a new person, with our new feeling or experience. He seems to impress love on us and turns our emotions into a new awareness of His presence. Something new exists in us. We are different. Within our feelings comes new life and excitement. As for me, when listening to gentle music about God being with us, my heart jumps with happiness. Music is His gift.
There is so much more for you to see in the extended version about the teaching of Bliss Symbolics. You will see the close relationships between instructors and the learners, and you will see many more examples of the activities that each of these students is engaged in. You will also see Britt Ambjörnsson bringing greetings back in 2001 from her students in Sweden. You will see Barbara Rush sharing the platform with Scott Barnard, one of her students. And you will see Trina Guy remembering her learning experience with Carol McLaughlin. Teaching Bliss Symbolics is an exciting thing. You're going to see many examples throughout this film. In addition to the Bliss Alphabet Song, there was music in our Bliss programs from the earliest days. You're going to hear an example right now from the 70s. It was recorded in 2001 at our 30th anniversary. The students that you see are students who benefited from that song through the years.
In this class we talk with symbols. Everyone can talk with symbols. First you point and then I answer. It's a conversation.
In Scotland, the first Scottish Bliss user created words for a hymn. You're going to hear that now, sung by Sarah Lightstone, so that you'll hear a young voice presenting it.
We are all Bliss children. We have symbols on our boards. When we learn to use them, they're just as good as words. We take our Bliss boards with us. We talk to all we meet. And when they read our symbols, they think it's quite a feat. We are all Bliss children. We have symbols on our boards. When we learn to use them, they're just as good as words.
The children were the thing. And here we have Anne Running, who's with us today, and you're going to hear something very special from Anne in a couple of minutes. But there she is, and those arms belong to Margaret Beasley, who guided Anne through many technology changes. And we did all sorts of fancy experimenting. Here's Darlene Gallant, where we were using an E-Tran board with Bliss symbols. And I wanted to mention someone that's been very important to Mark Beasley through the years, Linda Lysa-Hirka, because we didn't have just children. We had older children, and then we had someone who we all know, Sue O'Dell. And Sue was a very special person, the one that told us, you've got to do it for adults too. It isn't just for children. And Sue certainly demonstrated that to us. I want to go back to the children, and we have this teacher. No, we don't. That's Marnie. I thought it was Mary. We don't have that teacher with us, but we did have the little ones, and very, very innovative things happening in the classrooms in those days. So I just wanted to, a little bit of a tribute to the teachers who did so many exciting things with the Bliss symbol users. The very important role played by teachers through the years to my learning resulted in my philosophy of education as it was realized within my thesis. And I'd like to show you the cover of the thesis now because it had an important dedication. On the cover it says, "It is hoped this work will have an impact upon the reading instruction of those for whom it was written, and that it will be judged by them as offering both dignity and hope. They deserve no less." I hope this document, and it's a big one, will help some people who would like to expand the communication with Bliss to having Bliss assist in their development of literacy. Next, you'll see my AAC literacy ramp, and it was produced by Russell Sassini. He works at ComputerWise with Trina Guy and George Almeida, and until recently Justin Clark was there as well. I wanted to just show how work that I do is often intermingled with the skills of Bliss alumni. Now a few words from two instructors, one an educator, the other a speech pathologist, who are telling you about their learnings as they interacted with their students or clients.
I've seen it being used as a bridge to literacy. If you can read the Bliss symbols, you understand the Bliss words, and the teacher make you put some attention to the written word that's come over or under it, and then you can let your eyes go up and down from the Bliss word to the written word, and then you can slowly imagine to get into literacy.
Annemie Van Roy described to me in an interview just recently the importance of vocabulary and the development of concepts in her young Bliss users.
That they need a lot of vocabulary, and that helps for sure that they have enough vocabulary to start a reading process. And what helps also is that you have to combine things that you have to combine two visual things to have a new meaning of a word. That helps some of them. And we see that helps more than another symbol system. The symbol at the age of 2.5, when we see that there's a problem with communication. And then we look into what do they need to communicate? Which concepts do they need? And when we are not looking to the symbols by themselves to choose a symbol, but we look at the concept of a symbol. For us, as an example, home, or thuis in Dutch, home, is very important for young children, home. And that's very, very difficult to have a good symbol for that concept. And we choose always Bliss symbolics when we need that concept for a child, for a young child. And that's very important in Dutch. We don't speak often about a house. We speak almost always of the home. My home, that's where I live. So a picture, a photograph, it's always a building of a house. You cannot have a right afbeelding in Dutch, a right visualization of the concept. So even if they're 2.5, we draw a house and a heart to have a home.
And now an example of learners producing an instructional keynote presentation. This was done by Val Cruz and Bob Laurie at Brantford. Bliss symbol strategies using Combine. Meet the teachers. Hello, my name is Val. If you want to say something that is not on your display, then you have to figure out a way of saying it. In other words, you have to get creative. My name is Robert Laurie. We communicate with the language of Bliss symbolics. About the project, we want to make communicating easier. Bob did the work on the PowerPoint presentation. I did the work on the inserts and Bliss symbols for the presentation. We worked together on the combinations you're about to learn. Learning how to combine. You can combine Bliss symbols together to make new Bliss words. Bob and I will teach you to do this. Combine is a strategy you can use to say Bliss words not on your communication system. You will learn to make new Bliss symbols, to combine 2 or more Bliss symbols together. Let's make a Bliss word. Activity plus to amuse, take away the action indicator equals recreation. You only have an indicator on a later character in a bliss word if it's essential to the understanding of the new combined word. The steps to follow: decide, means, choose, combine. Decide. Decide the bliss word you want to make. This time it's going to be recreation. Means. What does the bliss word mean? Think about bliss symbols that define the new bliss word. Bob and I made a list. In the list we had to play, table game, sport, watch, movie, TV, read, amuse, happy, activity. Choose. Choose the bliss symbols. Do entertainment or entertain. Combine. Activity plus to amuse. Take away the action indicator, and this equals recreation. Combine the bliss symbols together. Follow the steps. Now you know how to use the combine. Decide, means, choose, combine. In conclusion, Bob and I are thankful for the bliss symbol language. Thanks to bliss symbols, we can communicate. We are happy to share one of the many ways bliss symbols can be used to communicate. We hope you enjoyed our presentation. We had fun making it. In the extended film, you will learn about the work of Ginny Storr and Claudia Wood in the 70s and 80s, the policy and the structure regarding symbol development put into place by Dick Storr on the board of directors, the way in which the Secretariat and the panel operate, and who the people are. You'll learn the challenges of responding to vocabulary needs and the prioritizing of vocabulary development between the international and the educational needs. You'll also learn about a current project for vocabulary development in Norway, and you'll see examples of Annemie Van Roy with excellent teaching, how she manipulates the specifier but maintains the classifier when teaching young children. The needs of the children drove all of our work in vocabulary development and the creation of new symbols. The role and responsibility of BCI is to maintain a standard authorized vocabulary. Then there are many strategies which can be used in order to accommodate individual children. I should say at this point, those strategies that we use came from our early program in responding to what the children did. They taught us the strategies they needed, such as sounds like, or looks like, or combining and making new symbols. All of these ideas came through the children's needs as they were communicating. One of the ways in which we maintained a standard for the bliss symbols was to have them drawn with a template back before we had computers. And Trish Bailey designed the templates and was responsible for the first templates that we had in the program. We made them in different sizes, and we had in our training workshops instructions on how to use the template. A symbol secretariat was established, and Claudia Wood was hired to be able to take on some of the heavy responsibilities that Ginny Storr had. Claudia's responsibilities involved distributing questionnaires about new symbols and then holding panel meetings and to work on the formal presentation of the fundamental rules. Her work culminated in 1992 in the Bliss Symbol Reference Guide. We had many, many panel meetings through the years. Some of the places we went were Israel, South Africa, Sweden, Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, both England and Scotland, and Wales. The panel meetings were always an intensive time with hard work and lots of fun times too. Some of the pictures you're going to see now will show you just the kind of experiences we all had. We developed a lot of vocabulary, but we had a lot of fun too. In recent years, there's been an accommodation to those who couldn't travel to get to the panel meetings by having them appear on Zoom at certain times in the meeting where they could give their ideas about the symbols, and these ideas would be considered as the decisions were being made. In the extended film, you'll find out more about how the information sharing stretched beyond parent letters to the world. And you'll also get more details about articles that were in the newsletter and in Communicating Together. And you'll get a preview of the first recording of the podcast. Our information sharing began with a parent letter in September of 1971. It soon spread to sharing information with the world. You'll hear about that from Ann Kennedy and Barbara Rush.
So many visitors wanted to come and see and learn, and that's what started the idea of having workshops.
Symbol Coordination Committee, volume number 1. It came out in '74. We ended up having 27 copies over 8 years. This was done on what is called a ditto machine, and some of you may not even know what that is. One of these purple things. That was the first issue. And then there was a great advance in technology, and the second issue was done on a cassetna. A hand-cranked cassetna with 36 pages and over 200 copies. And we had to lay it out on a table, and my husband and I and a friend ran around and around and around putting them together. But somehow they got out, and eventually we got more professional, and this became Wolves. Whoever it is. We became more professional, but we stopped in '82, and by that time BCI had some decent funding, was well organized, and they began to put out the formal Bliss newsletters, including the one from Russell Cecchini, that some of you may remember, which was printed, and then we moved into ComTalk.
The newsletter was a rich resource for all kinds of information about classroom experiences, resources that were available to people, advice from people who had already solved some of their problems in teaching bliss. Communicating Together was the next stage of information sharing. It was edited by Ann Kennedy from 1983 to 1991, when Peter Lindsay and myself took it on with an associate editor team until 2001. In 1998, Communicating Together went online. Two publications that made a valuable contribution to information sharing about Bliss Symbolics were in 1981, Bliss Symbolics Speaking Without Speech by Elizabeth S. Helfman, and In the Land of Invented Languages by Erica Okrant. Both these books describe the Bliss program with children who are non-speaking within the context of other invented languages at the time of their publication. As Okrant points out, we mustn't forget Mr. Bliss getting an article in the international issue of Time magazine in June of 1972. That was the beginning of all of the contacts and all of the phone calls that we were receiving at the center very early in our program. A little later, Mr. Bliss got an article in Reader's Digest, and then we had another batch of different correspondence coming into the center. In recent years, in addition to our websites for BCI and BCIC, we have shared information as the Bliss I-Band performed at events, Breaking the Ice, the Brantford Reunion, and through conference presentations, both in person and by their videos. In recent years, I've given 3 radio interviews, one for a program coming out of New York City, another one coming out of Ottawa, and another one coming out of London, England. And the last, for now, is we have a blog, Blissful Thoughts, on the BCIC website. I'm going to ask Julie to say a word or two about that because she works with her daughter Samantha and Glynis and Carol and Henry to produce many of the items for the blog.
Samantha and Carolyn, writing for the blog Blissful Thoughts, began as a way to help give them topics of discussion for their communication group.
Currently, we are in the final stages for a podcast to have its first showing in early 2022. It is being produced by Andreas Raskus and myself. We look forward to bringing many topics to the podcast. We're starting with bliss symbols and reading, but there's a wide field of topics, and we're keen to get started on them. In the extended film, you'll find out more about the role of Jim Grice as draftsman at the center and of Peter Reich. Peter Reich was a professor of linguistics at the University of Toronto and gave a lot of his expertise to our program. Our agreements with affiliates reinforced the standards. In each agreement that they signed, they agreed to support the standards for symbols and for training that BCI had established. And lastly, you'll hear more of Michael Everson's work in the extended film. Throughout the first 2 decades of Bliss, BCI worked in developing its own standards. It was done through the work first of Margaret Beasley, who worked with Mr. Bliss and then translated what Mr. Bliss wanted to Jim Grice, our draftsman. And then Jenny Storr took on that role, working with Mr. Bliss whenever he came to Canada. When Claudia Wood became symbol officer in the mid-'80s, her work ensured that the standard for Bliss Symbolics was maintained, ISO. Herb Bound, co-founder of IDON in 1983, as president and CEO of IDON, oversaw the federal government contract for this implementation of a system for the electronic communication of Bliss Symbolics. Today, Michael Everson is working on the Unicode character set, which we hope will be registered by Unicode in the next couple of years. Michael will describe that work to you now.
In Bliss because it was another writing system that I could analyze and help to get into Unicode, the computing standard, which is now used on billions of devices all over, because it's going to be on everybody's phone.
In the extended version of the film, you'll hear more of the legal arrangements with Mr. Bliss. There were agreements in 1975 and 1982, and then a less formal agreement in 2000. You'll hear also a bit of Mr. Bliss's frustration, and at the same time you'll know that we had some frustration too. And you'll also have information regarding the formation of the Cinematography Trust, which was the entity that Mr. Bliss set up to protect the copyright of his language. When I think of legal, I think primarily of the challenges we had with Charles K. Bliss. Mr. Bliss worked on the development of cinematography Bliss Symbolics between the years 1942 and continued right through to 1965, when he published the version of the book that we used as our reference. Our experiences with Mr. Bliss were very well described in 2001 when we celebrated 30 years of Bliss. Speaking at that time were George Wilson, our chairman, and Joe Lemire, our lawyer. They're going to tell you what it was like working with Mr. Bliss. There were many stressful times, but for this film, we're going to stay with some of the lighter moments. I hope you enjoy my version of describing the woman symbol. I had to have some fun when I was doing lectures.
And here is the symbol for man. And look, the symbol for action appears in the symbol for man, because for a man, action, success, endeavor makes life worth living. And look here, the symbol for creation appears in the symbol for woman, because woman is the trustee of creation. Within her womb, a new creature comes to life.
I just have to tell you one little correction on those symbols. Now, you saw the male symbol, the man, and you saw the woman symbol, and you heard Mr. Bliss's way of describing those two symbols. I have to tell you about the woman symbol. I have a little addition to make. Really, the woman symbol is the person of action, but with her feet very strongly on the ground. I never fail to tell new people that, so there you go. Now we're going to hear from George Wilson, who was our first chairman. And I hope George tells you how he got roped into becoming our chairman and then stayed with us for 14 years.
I did not need to be reminded of Mr. Bliss, frankly. I personally shall never forget him. It really was for me a very great pleasure to be chairman of the Institute. It arose out of being a member of the board of directors of the Crippled Children's Center at the time. And you might have noticed that Shirley had a slight disagreement with Mr. Bliss over the symbol for women. And she had a few other disagreements with him as well. And these came to light, and I was asked at the time by the board chairman if I would see if I could solve this problem. Well, it was not an easily solved problem, as you all know, and however, from it came the creation of the Institute, which is still alive and well today, I'm so pleased to say. I was very honored to be asked by Shirley to say a few words in a very brief time, and I'm happy to do so. It's wonderful to be here and to see so many old friends and familiar faces. I have many happy memories of my relationship with the Institute.
It was one dispute after another, but Charles always solved these things with flair. After one tiff with Shirley, he thought, well, I'll get up early, and he did, and he sat on the front steps of the house of the Minister of Education. He pinned on his lapel the medal he got from the Queen, and he waited till the minister came out. And the minister brought him downtown in his limousine, and appointed a commissioner to look into Charles's dispute with Shirley. Fortunately, the commissioner was a classmate of mine. The last words of his report were, "Mr. Bliss can be a very difficult man. It's his way or the highway." He was a brilliant inventor. He certainly had a hard life. We, in some ways, have had a hard life too. We are not a huge organization. Like Stuart McLean said about his little record shop, we may not be big, but we're small.
In 1982, Bliss Symbolics Communication International received a perpetual, non-cancelable, exclusive license from Charles K. Bliss to work with Bliss symbols with persons with communication, language, and learning difficulties worldwide.
1, 2, 3, 4. And get ready, Carolyn.
It's a must that you go to the extended version of this film to learn a lot more about technology, to gain additional information about what you're seeing in this film, to learn about seeding and its extreme importance in the application of technology, To learn about the BMW and Bliss strategy, both programs designed to let the value and strengths of Bliss symbols be united with MinSpeak and Word strategy. It's more about BlissNet, BlissTel, and BlissCom, as well as some more information about tactile Bliss symbols. There's been a total transformation in technology in the 50 years of Bliss. We're going to present examples from Canada, Sweden, and the USA. You will then see two very valuable Bliss processing technologies. And we will share with you messages from Paul Marshall, Nola Millen, and Russell Galvin. Russell serves on both the BCI and the BCIC Board of Directors. Here, Carrie Harrington is demonstrating the electromechanical display in Canada in the early 70s. Now we see an example of the advanced technology in the 80s in Sweden with the Bliss Talk. You see illustrations of it here. Greg Vanderheiden describes the technology he was responsible for in the United States in the 70s into the 80s.
People didn't really understand it. Every time I would see somebody who would be a good candidate for it, people would say, "Oh, but they can never use something like that." And so the problem was that it worked for people that you always assumed could never use pointing motions accurately enough to use anything.
Right.
And so the audience it was aimed for, nobody ever tried it with them because they decided without trying it that they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So they only tried it with people who had accurate pointing, and they didn't need it. We were doing this on 16K computers. That was our Bliss printer. So this you can see this is the kind of case. So this was the commercial case, and what we did is we made a special version where it would come in and go across the front on this plexiglass sheet.
This is Sue Odell using the Autocom. The BlissNet was the topic for a Bliss conference in 1995. Here is what some of the users had to say.
There is no question without the access to the email system, I would not be so involved in issues that deal with augmentative and alternative communication. Also, my life would not have the quality of personal growth and the learning opportunities as much without access to this system. I can give input to people, sometimes easier than talking with them face to face, because with the email system I can take my time to put down my comments in the way which I want to put them down.
BlissNet allows people who are very physically limited to have access to the outside world. I enjoy the freedom of being in constant contact with people throughout Canada. BlissNet has become more than a way to talk to others. It's a telecommunication family where we all care.
I'm going to jump ahead now to today and the Bliss symbol processing and dictionary programs that are available to us. The program widely used by educators is Bliss Online, and it enables us to write sentences, to find individual symbols, to draw symbols, to make charts. An extremely valuable software program and available for many languages. In the credits, we'll give the address for the Special Education Institute in Sweden that produces Bliss Online. We're very fortunate to have that software. The second piece of software is undertaken by Hannes. It is excellent for the production of symbols that we use, as in this film, using the various formats that are available. It also has the capability to draw your own symbols, and it is the first program that enables us to look up symbols by their shapes. We haven't been able to do that since our dictionary in Bliss Symbols for Use. It's very helpful. The last technology I'd like to refer to is of a different type. This is a way of using the three-dimensional printing. When you're looking at it, at the examples that Ken has sent, just look at the way in which he's able to demonstrate the adjectives that have this shape in them, over them, and the verbs that have this shape over them. Very nice to be able to do it with tactile symbols. And here's a few words from Ken.
I thought it was incredibly regular and consistent in its design and simple in its design. Here's an example of what designed as an alternative to the earlier versions of tactile symbols, but incorporating a Bliss symbol for same. What I love about Bliss symbols is, number one, it was a graphic language. And I thought if we're trying to teach individuals a language, why not use a language to do it? The second thing, Bliss symbols are not based on a phonetic or spoken language. They're intended to be independent of language, independent of culture. And then the third thing I think I like most about this is that it does have a live standards body behind it. I'm also providing tools to build things like this. It's tactile, it's raised, feeling position, one adding in the concept of earth lines and skylines, vertical space, taking that thing which is just static, what I call challenge tiles on it. But this is building the concept of father from its component parts. We're using the same concept just to do shape. Let's take Bliss symbols and make puzzles out of it.
Before we move to research, I'd like to read some words that Russell shared with me in his way of evaluating technology for AAC. The main lesson I learned about technology and Bliss, and really technology and AAC in general, the most important thing is not so much the development of the software, but having the sustained support for it in place on an ongoing basis. In the archives and in the extended version of our film, there's lots of information about research from the past. The study that was done by Harry Silverman, Barb Cates, and myself between 74 and 76. The work of Virginia Berninger that I like to reference because I think it's very valuable. Ralph Schlosser has done a review of the research that's been going on in the last couple of decades. So we have lots of backup information in the longer video. But for today, I'd like you to hear the summary and overview that Stephen von Tetzchner is able to provide, and some very practical results that are being reported by Christine.
My name is Stephen von Tetzchner. I'm a psychologist. I'm a professor of developmental psychology at the University of Oslo. Bliss symbol was more or less, I think, the first system that we learned about. Everything which was picture-like was regarded as easy. Anything which is not picture-like was not regarded as easy. And today we are using this expression that language for action. And I think we often forget that, particularly for the children who are motor impaired, language is their best skill. What is AAC for? Well, it's for communication. And you know, we use the term augmentative alternative communication. We don't use the term augmentative alternative language, which we could do because the whole idea is that it should, for many purposes, replace spoken language. When we cannot use the spoken language, we do it in some other way. So the question is more, what can you do with it? I think the essence of it is that we are going to use any system so that the other will understand the meaning. And there are some inferences, but it's the inferences is not only from, knowing the gloss, that is written on the symbol, but it's to, put the meanings together and within the situation. And this is like, in spoken language, but we have been so concerned with the iconicity in the sense that, is it, can I recognize the meaning of this symbol without knowing the symbol system before? And in most fields, we would say, you should know something when you have learned it. And there we come to the second point, which in my opinion is that we are so concerned about the speed of learning. And obviously, if you learn something fast, it is also quite simple. And in language, that might mean that what we learn fast has limited usage, because it's not so complex. We have learned it easily. And, if I'm a tourist in a country, it's nice for me to be able to say a few words, always get me good treatment. Everybody thinks it's nice that I'm trying to say yes and thank you, or ask for a beer or whatever I might ask for in the local language. But that's the easy learn. But the thing is that also the spoken language takes quite a long time. And that is, of course, because it's such a useful and complex system. We should not expect it to be fast.
Well, my name is Christine Statsklev. I'm a neuropsychologist. The project I have been heading up, The Better Life with Bliss, we had a total of 8 children included. It was an intervention project. One part of the group was the sort of more classical, if I may say so, Bliss user group. And the other group was actually a group of children with speech, but who had some of them had a diagnosis of a developmental language disorder, and they struggled very much with reading and writing, and sort of had given up, I think, and were disillusioned. And I think, to be honest, some of their teachers were a bit disillusioned too. And all of those actually progressed, learned to read and write, and had very much use of having introduction to Bliss and learning the Bliss symbols, and learning it in a very traditional manner, using a lot of paper and pencil based approach, where we drew the symbols together with them, and we talked about what the different parts of the symbols and how they were combined, and particularly also the indicators for the grammatical functions.
1, 2, 3, in, 2, 3. River, water than a mile. I'm crossing you in style someday. Oh, dream maker, you heart breaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way. To There's such a lot of world to see. We're after the same rainbows and waiting round the bend, my huckleberry friend.
In our archival material, there will be numerous records of the funding agencies and the volunteers who helped us through the years, including the board members who gave a lot of their time in helping us in many ways. We were able to survive over 5 decades through the financial support of many donors. The ones that stand out for me in looking way back, the Kellogg Foundation, the Atkinson Foundation, the Toronto Kiwanis Club. They all gave us funding that helped us with our publications, with teaching materials, with the practical things that could support our program. We would not have survived without them. Our annual reports that will be in the archives will list all of the donors through the decades. I'd like to just pay special tribute now to the donors of the Bala Learning Centre. First of all, the Ontario Federation for Cerebral Palsy, and the great support given to us by Clarence Myers during the entire time that we had the Learning Center when he was involved. And then the community of Muskoka helped us greatly. We had various fundraisers, and the people of Muskoka were very generous in supporting us. The mayor had her annual golf tournament funding devoted to us. And there were a lot of benefit meetings that we had that helped us raise funds. Julie Miller has shared some slides with us from one of the fundraisers where they had an auction sale, and she might even show you a picture that she bought at that fundraiser. In recent years, the funding for the Bliss Eye Band has been wonderful, and our primary donor right from the beginning has been the Lillian Meehan and Don Wright Foundation. We will be so ever grateful that they helped us get started and that they're still helping us go year from year. You'll see a listing of the various government agencies that have been supporting us in the credits that follow the film. Not all of our support came financially. We've had locations donated to us. Easter Seal was very generous in providing accommodation for us in several of the buildings that they were in. Of course, the Ontario Crippled Children's Centre had a place for the Bliss Symbolics program. And then in more recent years, we've benefited from the support of the Don Heights Unitarian Congregation, where we are now, and Donway Covenant United Church, who hosted us for our beginning years. And then there was the time that people donated. Through the years, as Ginny Storr and Ann Kennedy and several of the speakers at our various conferences in the past have noted that we would not have survived without our volunteers. We're ever appreciative of them. I actually had 70 volunteers working in our classroom programs in the second year of the Bliss program. All of these individuals giving a half day or a day a week to help our Bliss program. So a strong part of our community are volunteers. Behind all the pictures that you will see in this section, know that there's a story behind many of them, and many of those stories will be in the archival collection that will be digitized. We have an international Bliss community, and within it many local communities and special interest communities. For this film, I've created Bliss symbol for community, and here it is, many persons who feel togetherness. Please apply verbal combined indicators around that symbol. It's one that I created. This togetherness is experienced in many ways. First, we celebrate and have good times together. And I think of examples of that would be the gathering we had for Joe's move to Orillia, where he would be close to his relatives, Elaine Drover's 60th birthday, my 90th birthday. Events, a wonderful party we had in Brantford a couple of years ago, and the conferences that we are able to visit, all happy events. One special event was having a reunion with the Bala Learning Center staff. Silvano really enjoyed that. And there were those special times at community events and at my cottage. As in any community, we mourn the people that we lose. We have an annual meeting where we remember all the people we've lost that year. And one of the songs that we always sing there is the Light a Candle. This time you're hearing it by the Guelph Village Singers who attended our 30th anniversary. We connect in many ways, through music, as is very evident in this film, through art, through handwork that's exceptional, through crafts, through poetry, through art in all its forms. More currently, we connect with each other through our blog, Blissful Thoughts, that's on the BCIC website. We have many communities through Ontario. They bond together with their physical location, but we have Bliss users in Brantford, in Ottawa, in Hamilton, and in Toronto, of course. Brantford has a special relationship with the BCIC. Many of their members serve on our board of directors. It's a wonderful way for us to keep in touch, and we have Bliss study groups as well that we share with the Brantford group. The community that's closest to all our hearts is the one that was formed in Bala at the Bliss Learning Center. And we mustn't forget the community that has formed through the Bliss I-Band. And just to prove it, we have our t-shirts that show our identity.
I want to say thank you for Effie and Gloria.
Without volunteers, BCI would never have achieved the accomplishments that it did, and their continued involvement continues to this day. Judy Wine comments on the volunteering contribution to the panel. The panel for Bliss Symbol development is composed entirely of volunteers.
All of us did this in our volunteer time, as was said earlier, in addition to our own full-time jobs that we had. Most of us traveled at our own expense, and always with the feeling of family, of international collaboration, and of then going back and using it with the people in our countries for the purpose of communication.
At the same conference, Ginny Storr emphasized the importance of volunteers.
I've been a volunteer up until today. What I learned in that time was that what has been accomplished for Bliss Symbolics across the world is the result of hundreds of hours of volunteer time from dedicated, skilled professionals, family members, caregivers, and of course the users themselves.
And again, at the 2001 gathering, Ann Kennedy speaks of her volunteer jobs, first in the classroom and then in organizing workshops. Ann also describes something I'm very proud of, and that's the way in which volunteering contributed to the development of many talents and skills on the part of those doing the volunteering.
That a lot of the success of the program over these years has been Shirley's faith and belief in the system, in the students that we had throughout the many, many years, and in the staff around her, and the volunteers. Personally, she always made us strive as high as possible, and I've had the opportunity to learn and grow in so many different ways that I never dreamed of. Not only with the Bliss symbol system, as volunteers we had to keep up with all those new symbols the students were learning as well. I acquired computer skills, and believe it or not, I was editing a magazine for a while, 10 years. And of course, just generally organizing and management skills that I feel I achieved through my involvement with Bliss Symbolics. And I very much cherish the time I have spent and the friends I have made both Bliss symbol users and the international contacts I have and the friends around the world. And I wish things will go on for another 30 days.
We need to look at our grid again to just be reminded of the many volunteers who contributed to the development of the Bliss Symbol program. And there were many layers behind those on the grid. And here are two more volunteers who stand out for me to this day. Catherine Seibold started in the early 80s as a volunteer assisting Sue Odell, or serves on 2 board of directors, and has worked as administrator and then volunteered and is now our treasurer.
Well, I started working with BCI in 1982 with Sue Odell, and she's been mentioned a few times this afternoon. She was an inspiration to a lot of people. She may not have been the fastest Bliss symbol user, but she certainly was somebody who had a lot to say, and it was important to say it. I then became more involved in the international side of BCI, and we did attend, as Judy has said, a lot of very interesting meetings. I think the culmination of the 80s was our international panel meeting in Jerusalem that Judy arranged for us. We were there for 10 days. There were about 40 of us, I think, altogether. And we worked morning, noon, and night with the occasional break. Then in our playtime, this is what we looked like. There were quite a few women, as you gathered. There were 3 men, and this was one of them. Thank you.
Russell Galvin began in 1989 volunteering and then did some paid work working with the center, and now is volunteering again and serving on both the boards, like Catherine Seibold, serving on the BCI Board of Directors and the BCIC Board of Directors. There are also many examples of support groups for helping particular Bliss users or Bliss alumni. One example was that of Claudia Wood chairing a support group for Susan Odell. The support group for Sue was back in the 90s. Here's an example of a support group that developed for Joe Jessup 3 years ago. Gert Montgomery was a very strong component of that group, and Rebecca and myself also were in it. Through the efforts of all of the members of Joe's support group, Joe was able to move to Orillia to be close to his family, and that was a huge breakthrough in his life. And next, we will move to a very special group of volunteers, our spouses. They did the volunteering on the home front to enable us to do the many things that we had to do through traveling for Bliss. During the early workshop days in the 70s, we often thought about our husbands who were minding the home front, looking after the children, and keeping everything going while we were away doing workshops or visiting centers and collecting research data. As we honor them in the film today, giving them a rose, we're also thinking of our offspring. And I particularly am thinking about my 2 sons, Kevin and David, both of whom have moved into the field of special education in their own unique ways, and I'm really proud of both of them. I'm giving my husband Bob the first rose today. He's getting a big bouquet from Miriam Running back in 2001. And then I'd like to share what I wrote in my thesis as I was acknowledging the help that I got back in the 90s.
There's a gentleman in the audience that I never get to thank enough, so Bob.
Barb, on behalf of all the family.
And that was a very well-deserved kiss. In my acknowledgments, I say, I saved the most important person to the last, my husband Bob. Although this thesis is dedicated to those who participated as subjects in Study 2, it owes its existence to Bob. I will always treasure his unquestioning confidence in the worthiness of this project and his belief in the importance of what I've chosen as my life work. He ensured that the most important things in our life together, family, friends, our home, and our caring for each other, would not be sacrificed while I devoted extensive time and thought to the thesis. He was always there, a wonderful partner each step of the way, and I will be forever grateful. The next spouses you see are but examples of the many, many spouses who helped us along the way, but these are some that will serve as vivid examples of the kind of support many of us got through the years. Here is what their wives have said. Norman's support. He took care of the kids while I worked late. He cooked and did carpooling while I traveled doing workshops. Here he's relaxing with his camera while we enjoyed one of our trips. David was encouraging throughout. Mac has always understood the importance of communication, having been involved with AAC as a parent for as long as I've been working with AAC and Bliss. He never complained when I flew to Canada and Bala the day after we got married, postponing our honeymoon for 2 weeks while I attended the Bliss meeting. And Isaac, Mac is my constant support and help, and I cannot thank him enough for everything. Without the love and support of my husband John and my 2 children, Nick and Wynne, I would not have been able to undertake the Bliss Project in the UK. Their interest and encouragement sustained me throughout the period of my involvement. A supporting Bliss husband since 1977. And when Jill told Dennis what she was going to be doing for this film, he suggested a suitable comment would be, "Married Bliss." It wasn't quite what I had in mind. David's contribution to the development of Bliss symbols and later AAC in Israel is beyond description. He worked from home, and I could always count on him to be at home while I ran around the country and traveled the world with all that I did in the field nationally and internationally. But even more so, he believed in what I was doing, finding ways to enable non-speaking kids and adults to communicate. He became friends with and advocated for the people I worked with, and he was a great host, welcoming all the people who came to Israel into our home. I remember him making trip after trip to the airport to meet the participants in our Israel workshop in 1989, and always being on hand to participate in the social events of the workshop and to make sure everything went smoothly. I'm sure the road to AAC development in Israel would have been much bumpier without David's presence. He is certainly a member of the Spouses Hall of Fame, together with Bob and many others. I was one half of a team with my husband, John Rush. Technology and all the products it produced was a long way off, and all my teaching materials were made by hand. Every symbol on a Bliss board was drawn by hand. Every picture on a Bliss board was cut from a publication and hand pasted. Every worksheet was individually created to meet a particular student's needs. All this took hours of preparation at night, and my dear hubby spent that time with me, going through magazines to cut and paste pictures, preparing communication boards with all the squares I needed for my symbols. Good thing he was a draftsman by trade. It wasn't only the work he provided, it was the errands and housework he willingly carried out, so I could concentrate on preparing boards and lessons for the next day. They were exciting years full of promise and ambition, truly the best years of my teaching career, and it could never have happened without the help and support of my husband. Thank you, John. As a proud member of the Bliss family for the past 40 years, Peter has always been especially interested in the language of Bliss, as well as in those who use Bliss to communicate. At various times he has been our business counselor, an amateur videographer, and a willing helper at Bliss events. He fondly remembers helping Bob to put people in wheelchairs onto his boat in Muskoka. Ultimately, Peter has always been there to support me in every way. Cal is not only my husband, but my best friend. He has always been a constant, stabilizing force in my life. With his humor and even his singing, he reminds us to be positive and have fun. While we have been thinking about the support of spouses, it's a good time to remember that very special relationship between a parent and an offspring whose offspring is non-speaking and uses AAC. Here are 3 pictures that remind us of the special bond between a mother and her young Bliss user who grew up to be a Bliss alumni. Ruth Harrington and Carrie, Miriam Running and Anne, and Rosemary Marshall and Paul. All wonderful examples of the support a parent can give.
I've been changing the way that I see. I'm grounded and I'm feeling free. The pleasure, the pain, the sun and the rain, embracing the one who is me.
And I'm straightening my spine, balancing my mind. Life is a journey not to miss.
Breathing through to a wider view, I'm reaching out and following my bliss. Look at this. These symbols are life-changing, Chris. They give people a voice, and that makes me rejoice. I'm so glad I followed my bliss. And I'm straightening my spine, balancing my mind. Life is a journey not to miss. Breathing through to a wider view, I'm reaching out and following my bliss. Oh yeah, I'm reaching out and following my bliss.
You'll now hear in the film how the blissful oldies described their personal growth. In the extended version of the film, you'll hear more of what they said, and you'll also hear what they said in response to a question I asked them: who is the Bliss user or users you remember the most? And you'll learn why.
As a speech language pathologist in those days, in those early days, I remember it was just so wonderful to finally have something to give to the kids that we were working with that were not able to speak at all.
But I've also been involved in the International Bliss Symbol Panel from the start until today. And it's just, first of all, that's very much a family, but also it's just a way of thinking. It challenges your mind. It challenges your perception of language in different languages, because I'm thinking of 2 different languages.
I have to say, I don't know that I would have stayed in the field
if it wasn't for Bliss. Through Bliss, I mean, I got involved in Isaac, which got me involved internationally, which has led to what I've done for the last 20 years.
I always felt there had to be a way how we could give these children a voice. And when we discovered Bliss Symbols, I was so overjoyed.
It changed my life. It gave me a passion. I mean, I love teaching, but this gave something concrete that was so wonderful.
I always felt that my involvement gave me huge confidence as a practitioner.
It gave me intellectual stimulation, socializing with wonderful people, me the chance to learn and to teach, which is what I love doing, and to be within a community of wonderful people worldwide. And now a message from our Bliss Symbolics Communication International President, Margareta Janisch. Margareta has been our president since 2017, guiding us in our journey. She's a dear friend and colleague. We're fortunate to have her.
50 years with Bliss Symbolics. It's time to celebrate. Bliss Symbolics, which as a language has given a voice to so many persons all over the world. This is the time when we want to thank all those who have been engaged in Bliss work throughout the 50 years or part of the time. With satisfaction, we can think back on all the joy and sometimes struggle we have had as pioneers, as developers, as professionals, as supporters, and as students and learners. Bliss Symbolics has connected people and given us friends all over the world. This is also time to look forward to new generations of people who will use Bliss Symbolics as AAC, to countries who will recognize the linguistic qualities of Bliss Symbolics as AAC, and schools who will discover Bliss as a powerful bridge to language learning and literacy. Let's look forward to our working together to face whatever the future brings. So, long live Bliss Symbolics.
I began the film with a combined symbol for community. I want to revise that now. In the same manner that Annemie Van Roy said how critical the heart was to the house and building for a home, I think we need to add a heart to our Bliss symbol for community. So the Bliss community looks like this. I want to just emphasize that although we had a lot of change through the 50 years, the important thing was the development we had. Everyone benefited from their time with Bliss. Joe Lemire spoke about the value of being small. I'd like to say that there's value in what we're doing today with Bliss. We don't have huge numbers using the language of Bliss Symbolics, but we are keeping the language alive and supported, and we're moving into new directions in its way of being used and being taught. Bliss is alive and well for the Bliss users of the future. Throughout this film, we've given a digital rose to the people appearing in the film. We would now like to give a bouquet that we hope will be large enough for a rose for everyone who has helped Bliss Symbolics through the 50 years. At our 21st anniversary in 1992, Elaine Drover gave a hug to those members in the audience who had made a contribution to the development of Bliss Symbolics through the years. We would like to extend a digital version of that hugging, with Elaine being joined by her co-huggers.
I've been changing the way that I see. I'm grounded and I'm feeling free. The pleasure, the pain, the sun and the rain, embracing the one who is me.
And I'm straightening my spine, balancing my mind. Life is a journey not to miss.
Breathing through to a wider view, I'm reaching out and following my bliss. Look at this. These symbols are life-changing, Chris. They give people a voice, and that makes me rejoice. I'm so glad I followed my bliss. And I'm straightening my spine, balancing my mind. Life